Next, we're going to install the reel seat and the grips. What I've done here is I've put the pieces on the blank. They're not glued on yet, but this will give you an idea of how to look when you're finished. This is a winding check. Here's a reel seat, cork grip, bottom cork grip, 2 transition rings, and of course in the split grip configuration that our rods have, we have a space here. The things to note here is we want 2 inches between the bottom of the label and the top of the transition, which will give us approximately 6 inches between the grips in the split grip configuration. Put it together, see how it looks. When you're done with that, here's what I want you to do. Just take that ring off, and I want you to take a piece of masking tape. All I want to do is I want to mark right at the top of where that reel seat is, somewhere close, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. Before we prepare the reel seat for attaching it to the blank, I want you to put on these 4 pieces of the assembly. If you don't do that, you'll never get them on after the reel seat. So simply follow these instructions. Put on the rear grip, take the largest finish ring, put it on, facing down. Take the smaller of the 2 rings facing up, and then take the top of the split grip with the open section facing up and put them on. You get the idea. Simply do that, and then we'll go to the next step. We want to put the reel seat on the blank or get it ready to fit perfectly. Let me show you something. I'm going to slide that on, and it's kind of wiggly in there. And we want that to be a firmer fit before we start to attach it with the glues. Let me show you how we're going to do that. This arbor material comes with your kit. All it is a tape with foam on one side and adhesive on the other side. We're going to adhere it onto the blank like this to fit in the space between the blank and the reel seat. We're going to put the first piece of tape, about a ½ inch or 2 below the masking tape, and then put the rest of them on the blank proportionally the length of where the reel seat will eventually sit on the blank. I'm going to slide on the reel seat. And see, all that play that was there before, it's gone. And don't worry about this being perfect or the gaps being exact. We're going to fill this area in with a 2-part epoxy paste. That's what's going to hold it on. Please remember that we put these pieces on the blank before we put this arbor material on because, well, you can't take them off now. It's a good idea to cover the parts that you don't want to get any epoxy on with some tape. We're just about ready to mix the epoxy and assemble these pieces. One thing I want to remind you is that you might be getting some glue on some of these parts, and we want to be a little careful here. What I suggest is take some masking tape and wrap it around the places where you don't want epoxy to be. That way, if you're a little messy, and I certainly am a lot messy, you don't have to worry about epoxy getting where you don't want it. The adhesive you're using will be a 2-part epoxy. The 2-part epoxy holds stuff together really well, but you want to be careful you don't get it all over the cork or the reel seat or even all over the blank. We're going to mix the epoxy. In this case, I have a 2-part epoxy paste, which consists of a resin and a hardener. We take roughly equal parts of each. a healthy amount, a little more than that, of the resin and of the hardener. That looks pretty good. And we're going to fold them together like we're making a cake batter or icing. And we want to keep folding until the color's consistent and it's thoroughly mixed. I'm just using an old stick here. Popsicle stick's perfect. I'm sure you have something around the house. I'm keeping my watch handy because we only have about 15 to 20 minutes after we're done mixing to work with the compound. That looks just about perfect. Now that our epoxy is mixed, we're ready to assemble the reel seat and the grips onto the blank. Let's take a look at what we have so far. We have the two pieces of the split grip on the blank. They're not glued on yet. We have the transition rings, we have the reel seat, and then the top transition ring or winding check. Please note that the reel seat on a spinning rod is going to be configured in a way such that when you dial on that rod or tighten the nut, your reel will hang underneath. This rod says H&H XI IM7 blank. If your blank says anything other than that, throw it away and buy this one. Next, we're going to apply the two-part epoxy to the blank and start the assembly. I'm going to start to put the epoxy where the reel seat's going to go. I want to make sure I get some in these gaps. It's really the epoxy that's going to hold this reel seat in place. So I can move that out of the way. And I'm just going to start to smear it on. That's it. I put masking tape on the blank to hold the pieces that I glued so that they'll stay in place. Now we only had about 15 to 20 minutes of working time with the epoxy, but it takes some time to actually cure to be perfectly hardened. So what we want to do right now is just set this aside for, I'd do it overnight. Now with the epoxy cured, remove the tape. This is the fun part. Wow! Wowee! Woohoo! Hey, look at that. That looks great. We're getting there.